Hey, how's it going?
All
right, we are on stream right now with Dragma Labs. I am super excited about this stream. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties. I'm hoping that that X hops on pretty soon. I know there's a little bit of delay, but I think it's coming on live right now, so everybody can go ahead and watch and comment there. I will say that if you're watching this and you want to interact with us at all, the comments for YouTube are integrated. So if you do comment on YouTube, they'll pop up for us to see. I can even like post them onto the stream, and then we can respond to it as well. So if you want to be interactive and actually engage on stream, feel free to hop into our YouTube link and watch from there. Otherwise, if you're just listening or watching, you're welcome to watch on LinkedIn and on X. So we're streaming all over the place. So just a real quick review of who we are. I'm Ken Anderson, CTO of Tashi. Tashi has built its own consensus engine for use in the gaming space. And specifically, we're supporting peer-to-peer multiplayer gaming. So no servers, no hosts. You can think of it as like every player, every game client is a host of the game. And all of the hosts in the game synchronize their game state with each other. So it's a really cool and novel way, incredibly fast. So we're able to support most games out there. But that's what Tashi Consensus is we are supporting multiplayer games and allowing people to build peer-to-peer, strictly peer-to-peer, no servers involved, multiplayer games. And we're using Web3 technology to do it. I mean, we took the best of Web3 technologies and we're starting to put them together to make high performance, low latency, high throughput, and reliable and available technology in the gaming space. And our goal is to optimize the resources out there that support the gaming industry. If you've ever built a game or you've worked for a publisher or a studio, you know that those costs can be high when it comes to network egress and sometimes server costs. And our goal is to bring those costs down for the game developers, the publishers, and the studios to reduce cheating, because our consensus algorithm has some benefits that reduce cheating for the players. Also improve some of the gaming experience for a lot of those rural players. Some of those players are far away from what currently are the servers for those multiplayer games. You can imagine if you're off in the middle of nowhere and you want to play a game with people who live around you, you're going to get a much better performance by connecting strictly peer-to-peer than you would having to talk to all of you having to talk to a server that's really far away. And then for the game developers, simplifying the multiplayer component. So today we actually have a game developer. I'll let them introduce themselves, but it's Dragma Labs. They've got a really cool game called Rocket Team Racing. We played a little bit last week. Let me go and start by introducing Phil. Phil, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us your role with Dragma Labs and with Rocket Team Racing, and either you or Sai give a quick overview of Rocket Team Racing.
Absolutely. Yeah, with pleasure. Hey, really delighted to be here, Ken. Really cool. Thanks for the invitation. It was really nice. And thanks for joining last week. It was hands down one of the most amazing sessions of all time.
You know what? Let me say something real quick. So I recorded my session last week. Everybody knows this that is on the call with us right now. I made the mistake, though, of putting it on a drive that I did not put in my backpack when I came to the office today. So I don't have my video from last week. Phil, I think you have something that you might be able to show. Yeah. Do you have the present button on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, so there's like a present video file option there. So whenever you want, go ahead and throw that sucker up, and we'll kind of do it side by side here. Let me switch over to this.
All right.
And so let me go and add that to stage. There we go. Perfect. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, super cool.
Yeah. So go ahead and share with us what this game is about and what your guys' vision is.
Yes. Listen, it's the game to be competitive about, to have fun and to have a blast with. Up to 8 people in the same room, like you've experienced last week. It's a fun game down to what it is, to its roots. Very much, of course, very much like Mario Kart. So if you have like the feels, you understand what the game is already about. This is reminiscent, of course, of the Rainbow Road. We all have PTSDs of that racetrack back in the days, but it's a fun game. Of course, we're using components with Hedera back there. We are, but absolutely what it is, it's not a Web3 game. It's not necessarily like the Web3 game component that you would use. It's just a fun game, a fun product that you're using. It's really fast-paced. It is really competitive. The AI, the NPCs on there really will leave you no chance at all sometimes. We have around 10 to 12 characters that you can use in the game. We have, like, this is our 8th iteration of the game also. We're constantly working on it. This is still in beta phase. So the vision is just to have a fun product that we're using, of course, with great technology that we have, of course, with Hedera. And it's really a fun game that we've built, like the 4 of us really nonstop working at it. And my job over at Dragma Labs, responsible for branding, mostly socials, also beta testing the game, also making sure that everything works to the fine tuning with the guys and whatever. But it's just I'm just a gear inside the team, really.
Yeah, well, and you know the key point here is that you guys are building a fun game. I think you've said that a couple times, but that's like the driving motivation. That's like the heart of the game. Here, let me go ahead and I'm gonna hit play on that again so people can just watch it keep going. But that's what you guys did. Like, you know, you can see right here. This is, what is this called? Cloud Road or Cloud City or whatever.
Yeah, Cloud City. Yeah.
It is kind of a Rainbow Road throwback, but there are points where I think this might even be a little bit harder than Rainbow Road, especially when you have like really narrow turning curves with smoke on the track, right? Yes. And you have no idea on the other side of the smoke, is there a curve? Which direction is going? So you almost like really have to know the map and like, what are your lines on the map and stuff like that. So anyway, that was something I experienced firsthand last week, because it was a lot of fun. I didn't know the lines, and so I was consistently in last or second to last place with one of our other coworkers. But eventually, I'll learn those lines, and it is a blast. I mean, how many people did we have last week join us?
We were 12, 8 in the room, 4 in the other. That was crazy. Really
yeah,
fun
we ended up
time.
having to do 2 lobbies.
Yeah. Yeah, that was
Yeah, and
awesome.
it was great fun. We were all on Discord and trash talking each other and like it's at a point right now where you can
Yeah,
legitimately have a multiplayer game and be competitive about it, right? That's kind of the feel that I had right now is once you know the game, you know the characters, it's just legitimately a fun game that you can play today. That was one of the
it
cool
is.
things.
It is, and that's the whole point, right? Because we've all played games up to a point, whether that's on mobile, that's on desktop, that's on whatever. At the forefront of it, if you're giving yourself the environment for you to be having fun, for you to, like you said, you can like respectfully like trash talk and have a blast, and also you have a level of a measure of competition on there. I mean, you have a pool for you to be successful and to really
Right.
harness that feeling that we all played before. Like, wow, we know, and especially you've played, we're all gamers. Like you played a lot of games, you know what hits, and that's what we always had in mind. Like what hits, what makes a great game, what makes it like fun and easy to play.
You're talking about the Hedera technology there. Um, Tell me a little bit about how you guys are incorporating Hedera into the game today.
hmm we're up to a point where we are using many ecosystems like to harness what we want in our vision. That's what we came to the conclusion of. At the very first point, we were harnessing exclusively Hedera. Of course, with the hashback, like we use Wallet Connect, like to authenticate the token, which gave you access to the beta because we wanted to have it close to the chest at first because we had no idea really how to really properly do it. Because is there a way to properly do a game and to craft one? I don't think so. But still, we wanted to have like, okay, this is close quarters, you authenticate it on your hashback. You have this founders token that we did through a sale. That's an NFT. That's a JPEG. That's something really people that can really correlate to because they understand it because they can see it as an access pass. Oh, okay, cool, access pass. Okay, I can play the game. It's a beta phase. Okay, cool, etc. But afterwards, we come to a point, and that's like maybe 1 to 2 months ago, where we want to harness uh, many ecosystem that does it the way that they do up to their full extent. So if we were to use, I don't know, say Ethereum EVM for I don't know, wallet based like integrations, that would be cool. But also like HTS20, maybe just to have a scoreboard measure, like to have, it's just like using every single ecosystems out there to their full extent for us to be having the best product at hand without the gamers like feeling it. That's
Yeah.
the best conclusion that we've come across.
Yeah, I like that. It's kind of like, I mean, we know about this when you're running a business, you always want to use the best tool for the
Yes.
problem. And
Yes.
so every business is going to come with like multiple problems you're trying to solve. And it's just identifying what is the best tool for that. And I think in this space, we've got a few different things, right? There's like hardcore technical problems, which is like, how do we enable multiplayer gaming? How do we do it to have good game experience? How do we do it at a very cheap rate? And that's where Tashi comes in, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's where our discussion is right now with Dragma Labs and Tashi is how do we enable Dragma? How do we enable specifically the Rocket Team Racing to run as a peer-to-peer multiplayer game and still maintain that fun and the experience, right? We don't want to have any additional friction added because we're integrating with Tashi. We want it to be the same or better experience. And I would argue, depending on where people are located, it could end up being a better experience if you have a bunch of people close by and the servers are far away. So that's one thing I know from like a Tashi perspective. Now Tashi's not attached to any L1, right? We build plugins for every L1, but we're kind of our own technology. We're focused on the game multiplayer gaming experience. But we have connections to all kinds of L1s. And I know uh, you mentioned Hedera for the token gating. That's what you did currently, is using NFTs to allow people in to play the game early. I got one of my employees got one. It was a relatively seamless experience to get
Yes.
into the. As a matter of fact, my only friction point was because I didn't upgrade Hashpack. That was the only time that I ran into an issue is because of user error here. So, but once I had upgraded Hashpack, like the login experience was seamless with Hashpack, and you just scanned the QR code, it did its thing, and you were done. So that was the cool thing about the token gating. And you're right, you can publish the game in multiple places, and using token gating, kind of control who can come in and participate in the beta access. And I know you guys have
Yeah.
also launched a token on some markets as well. And in the marketplaces, people can buy these tokens and participate in the beta, correct?
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, we launched it a year and a half ago. Yes, on our
Awesome.
own
So
launchpad that we had before. Yes.
very cool. Yeah. So obviously, go to the Dragma Labs website if you want to get one of those tokens, or contact them in their Discord channel as well. But yeah, if you get that, you can actually play the game, and it's pretty cool. You can play solo, or you can play with multiplayers as well. I mean, there's a whole bunch of friction points in Web3 that
Yes.
that I'd want to address, right? So one of the friction points is key management, and that's just always going to be a friction point. Sai, I know we talked a little bit about that before the call. Did you want to chime in at all and talk a little bit about that? I know you're here to support some of this discussion here, but I know key management is always a difficult friction point when it comes to Web3 and specifically Web3 gaming. Like when it comes to which wallets we're using and all that stuff. I don't know if Sai's microphone is working yet. Oh no. He was on his phone earlier, so it worked fine then, but I think he switched to his computer, so he might be having issues.
You hear me okay?
There we go.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, sorry, having technical issues. Yeah, I think just building on top of what Phil said, it's about choosing the right technology for solving a problem, whether it's Web 2, Web 3, or whatever it is. And the reason for that is to make it easier for the user and as seamless for the user as possible. And therefore, yeah, we're looking at numerous solutions. I don't think there's many kind of perfect solutions out there on any chain for bringing in users and making it easy for them to flow between games, particularly Web3 games. But certainly, that's the ambition, is to now that we're at this point where we've had a sandbox environment, our community has played a major part in the development of that and the tweaking of that. And over the past few months, we've really been reflecting on, okay, right, how do we really dismantle this whole thing to very basic components? How do we look at our objectives in a very simple way of what we want to achieve, which is fun for as many people as possible, and then really match the problems to the solutions. And ideally, we don't want to be thinking about keys at all. When I play Web3 games and I've got the option of connecting my MetaMask or connecting my or signing up with email, generally I'll choose email so that I can keep my main wallets away from all the hundreds of dApps I connect to, right? Because you would never know where there's been a vulnerability or anything like that.
Right.
But there has to be some kind of middle ground, because you need, one of the main use cases for Web3 in gaming is that ownership of your assets. And if you're only attached by an email, then you don't really own your assets, unless there are equally clunky options for transferring those assets to other wallets, I suppose. But yeah, it's the sign-up process, the sign-in process, and all of any kind of transactional process or wallet connection process has to be as streamlined as possible.
Yeah, and I think there are definitely some tools out there that can help with that. I know, like Magic Link is one that a lot of people use, where you use your email address to log into things. I know, like Immutable X has the IMX Passport, which is useful. People are building on Fireblocks. There's different tools you can use to kind of abstract away that key management part. But I think, to your point, like, one of the promises of Web3 is ownership of your assets. And so there's always a question around, like, how much do you really control your keys? Because, like they say, not my keys, not my assets, right? And so if you don't actually control the keys, how do you get access to your assets? And so I think right now we're going through a phase of, we started off really strict with that principle of, you have to own your keys, you have to manage your keys, take responsibility. If you lose your keys, that's your own fault. And that was maybe okay in the early days when we were talking about finances. But now that we're talking about gamers who don't want to go through that extra step, who don't want to have that extra point of friction, signing in with an email has to be as simple. That has to be how simple it is. But then how do we balance that? And I think we've kind of swung all the way over to, like, now we're just using emails for IMX Passport and Magic Link and Fireblocks. But now there's got to be something in between. And I think that there's a solution in there, maybe something with MPC, maybe something that is maybe massaging Fireblocks a little bit. There might be something available there. I know that in the Hedera ecosystem, Lehman's really big on the decentralized recovery, the DREC stuff, which basically means like you're still managing your keys with your private key, but you're doing it through your social connections. You're doing it through a trusted subset of people that you know, and you're constantly re-keying and resharding the key and redistributing the key. As people are online, they're connected to each other. You're constantly doing this to ensure that there's availability of your key for signing. And so in those scenarios, I could see where gaming becomes a really useful place. You can imagine a launcher that has like a friends list or your clan or whatever you have going. Those people can be your trusted parties for this DREC or decentralized recovery mechanism. So I think we're on the cusp of something. I see that coming in the next maybe 6 months to a year of there being a solution that allows you to manage your keys. Because you got to think what a wallet is. A wallet really is key management and transaction signing, right? You're managing your keys. So how do I recover my keys? Most keys in the Web3 space are the same format. There are sometimes deviations in what key formats you use. That's usually like ECDSA or ED25519. But either way, we've got a set of keys that we can kind of all centralize around, or we can all agree on. But then there's the transaction generation. And if you're dealing in EVM space, it gets very easy. There's only a limited set of transactions you can perform on an EVM. And so if you have that compatibility, that interface, building a wallet that makes key management easy and then talks to multiple networks via EVM gets easy, but then you got to add like Hedera's native transaction types, and different networks have different transaction types. So I think the vision you're kind of getting at, size, like maybe there's a vision someday of having like one key manager that is seamless, that has zero friction, that can build transactions for multiple networks. So now when you're gathering assets on one game, you can actually potentially expose them on another game, whether it's like as an in-game asset or as some type of ante for some entry fee into a micro tournament or something like that. But some way for there to be that cross-chain transaction capability without any of the friction that we currently have. And so I see that being a real possibility, but there's a lot of cross-chain stuff we got to figure out until we get there.
For me, another big use case for Web3 is data. Particularly when you look at Xborg and platforms like that, where they're building out the kind of digital identity that attaches to gamers and the kind of credentials that you can collect along the way with either a soulbound token or similar. Having an identity that has that DREC element, but then that identity having that applicable and interoperable between chains, but preferably also either collecting data or integrated one day with things like Steam and the Epic Games launcher, like all these kinds of things. For me, it should root in identity, because ultimately that's something that not just Web3 gaming, but the whole of Web3 is going to bring to the world, is ownership of your identity, verifiability of your credentials that are attached to you, and being able to integrate all kinds of interactions with all kinds of institutions, Web3 games, whatever apps or areas where you need that immutable verifiability. I think that's the golden chalice, I would say.
Well, and you're saying specifically the identity components, right? Because I can attach a lot of things to identity. I can attach gaming achievements. I can attach various game-related metrics, like what clan am I?
You see these play to airdrop campaigns out there, and they're like extremely untargeted at the moment. If you had a proper identity and credential system, you could be routing your rewards and your incentives and directing them really in a much more targeted way at people who actually game, as opposed to farmers who will dump you as soon as they've got the earliest opportunity.
Well, and I think of like the clan model, right? So when you have clans or guilds, I remember I used to play Titanfall, and I had a clan that I played with in Titanfall and Titanfall 2. And we got into Call of Duty as a clan as well. And we had our one Discord where we all were chatting, but like in the games, we were different clans, right? In the game, we had to like rebuild the clan in each game as our team. right? And so I think that's kind of where you're going. I think the idea of like portable clans would be super cool to be like, hey, we all play games together, regardless of which game we play. We just want to show up in the game and be in our clan, be in our group, and be able to like quick click into a raid or into a session or a team or something like that. So I'm thinking through that. Is that kind of the direction you're thinking of, like being able to carry not just your identity, but also your relationships and your achievements with you throughout the game?
And then that kind of friends network and the direct that goes along with it is attached to that identity as well. It just feels like a, you know, like I think way beyond Web3, like this, like why shouldn't your identity be kept in that way? Why shouldn't you be able to accumulate data with your identity and then sell that data as you want it to be sold, rather than
well, and I think I think you're starting to touch on a different value proposition that I don't know
there's a whole load
the audience has started to think about. But I think the first one is like, you know, my identity and my socials and my achievements are mine. Why can't I go see that? Why can't I carry that with me across gaming ecosystems? And then the secondary one is like, hey, listen, these gaming companies are making money off my off of using my data to serve ads to myself or to generate better profiles for ad targeting. Like, why can't I also get compensated for that? And so I think there's kind of two different value propositions there. That second one has been like one of the promises of blockchain. And I've seen a number of companies, especially in the Hedera Council, when I used to be at Hedera, that were trying to go after that model, which is like, how do we get consent by compensating the sources of the data that we're using? And how do we also tokenize consent? So I think there's a bunch of stuff around that. There's also stuff around like, how do we prove that ads are served to people that they're meant to be served to and not to underage people or people in different geographical areas? So I think there's a lot of cool value proposition potentials there. I love the idea of like portable identity, achievements, socials, owning and being able to profit from your own data, and also kind of like consent management and advertising, like compliance and stuff like that. There's all these different things that we could potentially solve with Web3. But I'm going to hop over to Phil real quick. Phil, why do you think that like these things don't exist after 6-7 years of very intense programmable Web3 technology? Why? And when we're what was it, 2017? So 7 years, 2016, when Ethereum really took off, we started to get that programmable experience. Why do you think we'll say 8 years now, why hasn't it taken off? Why aren't people using these for these use cases? What is stopping Steam and Epic from picking these up?
I think we're just that's an amazing question. I think we're just starting like to like build bridges, like genuinely like build bridges and really like stop working in silos, because there's been this whole, and especially you can for sure you can see it when you talk about Web3 gaming to any casual gamers out there. I think you can absolutely see it. There's a whole lot of misconception about what it truly is, and it's nowhere near different. It's just a new technology that you're adding. I think that the difference, and as to why it hasn't like really evolved in like 6, 7, or even 8 years, is that there's been this level of communication that wasn't really present. This communication that we keep on tackling, that we keep on processing, that, hey, this is going to be a game. These are going to be new technology added on top of what you already know. But the fact that oftenly, like when people have something new like present in front of them, sometimes they're reluctant. So it's for us, like especially gamers and all the people that's inside the gaming community, just to keep on tackling that message that nothing will truly change. And it's for us also to keep on pushing that narrative where we're having this whole shared world technology that's just going to usher something new for them, but it's going to be a game still. Nothing changes. So, but I think it's most oftenly like the same when there's new technology inbound. It's just for us to keep on tackling the message that nothing changes. It's just like, hey, it's just new means this. It's a wallet, but it's an app.
So that term shared worlds did you throw that in there on purpose?
It's something I always use. Yeah.
Okay. You know that's where Swirlds comes from, right? Shared worlds.
Yes.
That's been Lehman's vision from the beginning, is having this. He used to say to be able to carve out a piece of the internet for you and your friends.
That's
And
what this
so,
is. That's truly what this is, because there is no way since 2017, and the gaming world changed so much in the last 8 years, especially since I would call it like the peak of the gaming era and the gaming streaming era. That I genuinely feel like this Web3 phase that we in will usher a new thing, will usher new sparks and new connections, and yes, new shared worlds and new stuff for people to grab upon. And I think this we're at the brink of it. And of course, I humbly believe that games like us and what we're doing at Dragma Labs would absolutely help it. And yeah,
well, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit. All right. So I've heard that for 8 years that we're on the brink of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'd have a more cynical response, I think, to be honest.
So, Sai, what do you think, Sai?
I think the focus has been more on sales than it's been on product broadly in the Web3 space. I think it's especially like the nature of this space. You can find yourself so tunnel visioned on what we have and how to make what we have work, and many people out there aren't really focused on what is there and how to use it. They're more focused, people are spinning up chains left, right, and center now. And are all of them really solving novel problems? Probably not. Like, a lot of them are doing what chains have been doing for years already. But there's a path of least resistance to making money in this space, and many people are following that path of least resistance. It's less about what problems are out there and what problems need solving, and more about, this is worth buying and my KOL is supporting it, therefore buy, and I'll willingly buy, because if enough KOLs are talking about it, I'll know there'll be secondary demand. It's just, it is the speculation thing is a double-edged sword, in the sense that we need speculation in order to bring funding into this space as it develops, because otherwise there might not be that funding. But at the same time, there's still the construction and problem solving element of it that can make it applicable and acceptable and friendly to the wider world, and wider adoption is often sacrificed with that speculation.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, we've had, you can call them money grabs. People have been going out and building projects. Well, okay. Mance even used to point this out in the Hedera ecosystem, not in the Hedera ecosystem, but in blockchain in general, that like open source is a great technology, but when you pair it with financial incentives like a blockchain would, like, it can corrupt the ethos of open source. For example, when Ethereum was built, there were immediately 1,000 copies of Ethereum with zero improvement on the technology. It was just, I have a new coin, a new blockchain, come over here and program something and do stuff over here. And it's like, well, why didn't you just build on Ethereum? Like, was it an issue of gas cost? Because there are projects that came out and said, hey, listen, we're going to do like a cheaper Ethereum. And all they did was sacrifice security for performance or for cost. And so to improve performance or to decrease cost. But they sacrificed security in the process. So there were a lot of those types of projects that came out where there really wasn't innovation. It was more about creating convenience, and in some cases increasing risk in the security side, the technical security side of the project. But you can think of that like, there are entire blockchains that were thrown up that didn't really improve the stack, the technical stack. And it was just about the sales part, if you will. Now, that being said, we've had a lot of innovation since. I mean, we've had zero knowledge proofs are a big one, all the L2 stuff that's going on, sequencers, still plenty of innovation to do there. But I still see the big blocker of like, how do we take this Web3 technology and make it applicable for like real Web2 value? Because you got to think about it. Like, Web 1 was like, how do we take what we do on brick and mortar and in print and create brochures on the website, right? How do we present that on the website? And so there was like this natural bridge of like, as a user, I don't have to leave my house now to find out what's on sale at the local hardware store, right? I can now go to their website and see what's on sale at the local hardware store. If I have a question about a restaurant, I didn't have to go to the restaurant or call the restaurant to figure anything out. I can go to their website and see what is it they offer at this restaurant. So there were lots of things that came with kind of that Web 1 space. And then Web 2 kind of turned into like new models of business, new business models. So it was like, okay, how do we interact? We have this bi-directional interaction between the consumer and the people who are the producers or the people doing the selling. And there was a convenience component there of like, as a business, how do I create good online experiences without charging the customer a bunch of money? And the answer to that was advertising revenue. And the whole advertising revenue with algorithms and profiles and stuff kind of emerged from the social space and from the search engine space as a way to generate revenue on the internet to pay for your activity, because your activity is not free. It feels free as a consumer, but I think they average, it was something like $47 a year is what it costs in advertising revenue per internet user. And I'm sitting there thinking like, man, I would pay $47 a year to never see an ad, like to use the internet and never see an ad. But now we've got subscriptions that are $10 a month. And so, and if you got 3 or 4 of them, you're paying way more than $47 a year for your internet experience. But the point is like the internet got creative. We got bidirectional interaction. We had new business models that allowed to create high quality content for consumers where the consumers aren't burdened with the cost. And now Web3 comes to the table and says, now we're going to add ownership to that. And we're going to add kind of like the ability to move your assets across different experiences on the internet. And so there's like this ownership component of it. And also I'd argue like there's an optimization potential of infrastructure for the internet that we can use, where not only can the internet be run on servers that are in data centers now, we potentially could leverage individual users' machines and optimize the use that's there. So we decrease the cost of the internet from a data center and server perspective, but we do it by using underutilized or unutilized resources at the consumer or at the edge. And so I think that's where Web3 is like, how do we decentralize the infrastructure? How do we decentralize the finance? How do we add ownership? The problem is like the boundary between Web3 and Web2 is so vast in technical challenges, key management, on and off ramp. There's all kinds of risks because when you decentralize something, you kind of create almost an anarchic ecosystem where like bad things can happen a lot easier. So there's regulatory pressure and concern. Like there's this big gap between Web2 and Web3, where the gap between like brick and mortar to Web1 was like, oh, we're just adding value. Done. It's convenience. Going from Web1 to Web2 was like, oh, now we're adding new business models and we're giving you better content. So we're just adding value with no friction, right? It's the same experience, just better. And now we're going from Web2 to Web3, and it's like nothing but friction there in between the two, because you really have to fundamentally change how you interact with each other on the internet. And so I think that's one of the challenges. That doesn't mean we can't overcome some of the major friction points like key management. Think of Battle.net, Blizzard's authenticator, the Battle.net authenticator, I think it was. When they first came out with that, like how many people actually set up two-factor authentication in World of Warcraft? Probably not many people, but now pretty much everybody does, because they know what it means to get their account hacked and lose all of their equipment when somebody sells all of their items in game that they've been storing forever. So we did overcome some of that friction from a security perspective of like there was enough pain involved and value added that people were willing to take that extra step of two-factor authentication. And now two-factor authentication is just like part of our standard security protocol. I don't know, I wouldn't go as far to say that it started in the gaming space, but I will tell you that like gamers were some of the first to massively adopt two-factor authentication because they're spending hours playing their game, having fun, the important thing, collecting their assets and their items, and then they're getting hacked and stolen. All their items get sold, right? So they were one of the first groups to massively adopt two-factor authentication and authenticators. So I don't think we can't overcome that friction point of key management. I just think that there has to be enough pain or value, the pain to avoid or value to gain, to justify people going into that. And again, I don't think the answer is 12-word phrases. Like 12-word phrases is, I feel like we're going way back in time where you have to like print something or anyway, I just the 12-word phrase solution to key management is not the answer. DREC might be the right answer given how connected we are these days. So, but that all being said, like I feel like there's still that big gap between Web 2 and Web 3. So I appreciate where you guys are coming from, which is like our first priority is make a fun game, right? And where we can inject the appropriate Web 3 technology with the minimum amount of friction, we'll do that. Similarly, our whole strategy is like, how do we build technology for multiplayer games that uses Web3 technology but adds none of the friction? And that's a real doable thing for us. What we've built, what we've optimized and put together from a Web3 consensus engine perspective allows us to have these fully on-chain games. We call it fully on DAG to kind of differentiate from on-chain games, but fully on DAG games. Now which means that the game itself is running consensus on the individual client computers. So when you're playing your game, you are the consensus node, and you are reaching consensus with all the other players in your game, and that's the authoritative state of the game. And we're sub 50 millisecond latency on certain size games. We're extremely high throughput, so we support all kinds of games. And this is part of the discussion we're having, right? Of like, how do we do this with Rocket Team Racing? Is how do we have this purely peer-to-peer gaming experience that doesn't require any servers? So I think we've reduced the friction in key management for that. But that's a fully on DAG game. That's maybe a side chain, if you want to think of it that way. It's like your own private side chain for your game session. I think we've solved that. We removed that one point of friction. But there's another big movement. There's a lot of momentum, of velocity, if you will, in asset management. So like adding assets into your game or using NFTs for in-game models. There's all kinds of stuff going on there, or even tracking your asset balances on an L1 or an L2 and L3. In your game, I see a lot of potential for using like NFTs to own models, right? In-game models, cars and players and stuff like that. What is your vision around that? Because I know there's a lot of people who are there are a lot of people who are very interested in the NFT side of gaming, in addition to just supporting fundamental gaming functionality, which is what Tashi's primarily focused on. We're also building plugins to import and settle assets between our game sessions and L1s and L2s. But how does that fit into the Rocket Team Racing vision?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'd say is that free to play is fundamental to what we want to do. So anything that we do with tokenization of any kind, it's going to be to make the experience better, but not corrupt it as such. So the idea is that you can play the game, you can enjoy the game, you can win in the game just as equally without NFTs as you would with them. But in the same way that I would say PFPs aren't going to die, in the way that people associate with certain communities, a PFP can represent it can tell you more about a person than a photo of them a lot of the time if you know your NFTs, right? It's the same thing. Just people identify with certain communities, they identify with certain groups or guilds or whatever it might be. And that's where we'd like to bring it in, is involving different IPs, inviting in different communities, and that's where it rooted really is Hedera. When we first started conceiving the ideas behind Dragma Labs and Communify, it was, well, we're building a game, which is great. We're going to be within this small network, a fairly small community, and we'd like to welcome everyone in. And there's a bunch of different projects here. We're approaching a bear market. Everyone's going to be struggling. We can offer something to every community, and every community can offer something to us. So it's about offering the opportunity for different brands to hopefully IPs that match with us, right? You don't want to go and like just bring any brand in, because it would just look kind of grotesque alongside fun and kind of relevant brands. But inviting communities, let them play together, let them form teams, let them maybe even delegate or elect someone to represent their team in a tournament, whatever it might be. The idea is just to represent numerous different communities, help them be a presence in a big way through this game. And obviously there's a user acquisition element in that as well. So the idea isn't particularly to financialize the game in any way. It's more just to make it more fun, more exotic is the wrong word, but maybe diverse and just more vibrant and goofy and You know, we don't take ourselves too seriously, and that's the idea. Is like you will see a robot next to Rocket, and it might not make sense to you, but we can bring all kinds of sense to it, and that's the beauty. I think that's something that Web3 has opened a lot of people's eyes to, particularly the idea of the metaverse and all this kind of stuff, is that this is a world where you can do what the hell you want. You shouldn't necessarily do everything, but if you do things in a fun and not too serious or stupid way, then you can be more inviting, more fun, and more vibrant and just nice, you know. Like in the same, you said the other day, like it's just nice to have a game you can just load up and play and leave it when you want, and you just don't care. It was fun while you were playing. When you left, you didn't have any kind of, oh shit, I need to leave it on pause, or I can't, like I have to get back into the game. It's like you play it when you want, you'll enjoy it every time you play it. It'll be easy, it'll load up quick, and it's no burden on your life, and you can enjoy it with your friends. You can, if you see someone driving around in Phil's car, then you say, oh, he's part of that community, like I get him, I'm going to drive next to him, I'm going to be rooting for him if I'm not winning, kind of thing. It just brings that like common sense fun and like good cheer to it, really.
So Phil, what do you have to add to that? Because I'm thinking like we could build that entire experience without Web3, but I think what I'm hearing from you is the community that is inherent in Web3 can now be imported into this game if done right, and we can kind of do it in a verifiable way so that, you know, if someone's driving in Phil's car, we know that that's Phil's car. Like there's no question that that's Phil's car and not anybody else's car, right?
I mean, that's so cool. That's everything in my opinion, and not Phil's car. It can be a Ken's car. That'd be so cool. And to me, I always put the term bragging rights to it, because there's this level of, I want to showcase not only what I'm about, but also what I can bring in terms of community around me. And yes, we've spoken the words like shared words before, but that's precisely what this is. If someone was to see and imagine yourself, the key moment, you know, you're having fun in a race, you're just clutching it, you're in second place, but you see in the first round, you know, first race, first lap, someone who's in first right in front of you, it's Ken's car. And then someone is streaming, and you have this whole community which you've been following you for 2 months, and they've seen you on stream, they've seen you here, and you have this all layers of stuff happening because you're second, Ken's in first, and you know his whole entire community is following you because it's token gated, because also the only person who can like drive the Ken's car are the one inside your community, because there's an NFT attached to it or something. So it brings up a lot of tech, but also it opens up so much because it gives purpose, in my opinion. It adds up layer for you to have a race that is different every single time while having the same game. So you have a product that is constantly evolving, not necessarily through the product, but through the people playing it. And that's absolutely everything, in my opinion.
Yeah. And that, you know, we just finished with the Olympics, right? So, and people have kind of like joined forces and rooted for each other based off of where they happen to be born or happen to live in proximity to each other, right? It's one of the most arbitrary reasons to build a community, is like we live next door to each other, so we must be the same, right? We must have the same interests. But
Today I like you.
What's that?
Today I like you. Yesterday you were just my neighbor.
That's right. That's right. But here we're talking about like communities that are aligning interests, right? We're building communities around interests. Geographical borders don't matter at that point. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about Web3 that has been proven out over the last few years. And, you know, I didn't put a lot of stock into it 8 years ago. And I'll tell you why. When I saw Web3 tech, I'm just like, okay, how is this going to improve technology from a very fundamental functional perspective? I was like, when I worked with the Interwork Alliance, working on the token taxonomy framework. Now, they had already laid the foundation long before I got involved. I got involved when we were talking about renewable tokens. But they had a whole taxonomy about how to write formulas that define tokens that can be programmed into an EVM. So we can now have like compliance and like consistent understandings of what a token is in various use cases. So we had tokens for everything from like, rental profit sharing, access for employees into buildings, for identity, for renewable credit generation and trading. Like we had tokens for everything. And now we see a lot of the stuff kind of coming to fruition with the real world asset stuff, the RWA tokenization stuff. But I remember the first thing somebody said to me, they were like, oh yeah, we're going to tokenize art. And I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, how are you going to guarantee that that piece of art on the wall is tied to this token? Like if I own the token, okay, sure, I own what's on the wall, but how do I prove it to anybody without there like being an RFID or a QR code or something on the piece of art that says, yeah, that's the piece of art that goes with this token? There's like this connection of the two that was an issue for me originally. Now, I think Twigital, they've probably come as close as I've seen to solve that problem, because the scanning technology they use can create like a fingerprint of the physical object that now can be matched to the token. So it's like they do some cool stuff to kind of solve that. Shout out to the Twigital team. Love those guys. But I think we're closer to that now. But I remember at the time thinking like, okay, tokenizing art doesn't make sense because you can't link the real world asset with the token. So that sounds dumb. And then somebody said, well, we're going to start with digital art. And I remember thinking, who would buy digital art? Like that sounds so dumb to me. And I was like, no, it's going to be like access controls and revenue sharing on rental properties. It's going to be like educational credentials and stuff. I'm like, there's like a million other things we can do with tokens that is way more valuable. And then a few years later, also the founder of Citadel and also Peculiar Peeps sat me down and gave me like a talk. And he was just like, listen, this isn't about the digital asset.
Shout
this
out
is
to
about
Indy.
community.
Yeah,
he was like, and it's not just a community. It's like there's a scarcity component. You're part of this community. And I've told the story a few times of like when I went to the Tyson Fury fight in London, and I'm sitting next to a guy and we're just sharing stories saying why we're here. And he says, oh, I'm here for the Tyson Fury fight. Me too. And he's like, yeah, I also do crypto. And I'm like, oh, really? What do you do? And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm a Bored Ape. And I'm like, oh, interesting. He's like, and when I got to London, I pulled up an app and I found a couple other Bored Apes and we went to the pub together and had drinks. And I'm like you were just literally in a strange land, first time you've ever been to London, and you found a community to go have drinks with. And I'm thinking, okay, now it's starting to click to me. Like, it's not about the art. The art is how we recognize each other in the community. Like the shirt I'm wearing today, like if you know, right? It's from a book series. So if you've read the book series, you know the art that's on my shirt and like what I'm saying, right? And we do that a lot with t-shirts. Yeah. We do that with logos. We do that with everything, where we kind of like express our interests through what is on us and what we wear. But additionally, and there's kind of like an inherent community, but with tokens, we've created almost explicit communities, right? We've said we have a common interest in something, whether it's, Dead Pixels or Peculiar Peeps or Bored Apes. Like we've created this community around some aligned interest, and we allow that to represent us as PFPs. And what you're talking about is like having that incorporated into the games itself. So I suspect the cars in Rocket Team Racing, I'm going to have a spot to put a PFP. That's my guess, right? At some point. Am I right or am I wrong? Like,
I'm not sure about on the cars, but within game, that would be the, perhaps not the car itself, but somehow represented, I would say.
I'm just thinking Call of Duty, like if you remember on the guns, you're able to like put little logos and stuff on the guns and stuff. Like,
yeah, we haven't actually thought about putting them on the cars, to be honest, but we can definitely float the idea.
I'm sure it's been more of an IP play though, right? Of like, we're going to partner with projects and explicitly incorporate tokens that represent those projects, which also means if there's revenue generated, there's profit sharing, there's like tracking of usage of trading of assets. Like there's all kinds of stuff like that in there. Like if I have the Ken car, for example, that we're a partnered IP. Ooh, I'm exploding in the background. What did I do? Something with my hands. But if I have the Ken car and I design it and it's my personal car, and then I sell it to Phil and Phil goes and drives it in game, he's kind of showing off that, hey, listen, I'm the owner of that guy Ken's car. Right, I'm the new owner, and everybody in the world knows that was Ken's car.
Yeah, and you can decide what supply you want there to be. You can make it as rare or as common as you like. It could be a one of one, and I think that's something that we'd like. Well, at least in my head, I'd like to be a part of it. It's kind of experimental in a way because it's this whole thing's an experiment, Web3. But
Yeah.
it would be nice, particularly the Hedera community. They're going to be ahead of the game when it comes to character collecting. Who knows how many characters we can get in the game, but certainly when we don't intend to stop with Hedera projects. And there's certain words that I love that I think have almost been born from Web3 for me, and cross-pollination is another one. Community, I think about a lot, and it's not the same community that a layman would be hearing, that's for sure. But cross-pollination as well, and again, like I say, not in a kind of grotesque isn't necessarily the right word, but I don't want to see a Starbucks necessarily in Rocket Team Racing.
Yeah, kind of that cringe.
But yeah,
cringe,
just kind of
product
this,
placement.
yeah, it's just inappropriate and not really helping anyone, I don't think. But you look at Nifty Islands doing it as well. They've done it with the UGC element, getting lots of different communities in there. But
and for those who don't know, UGC is user-generated content. I just wanted to make sure that was
sure.
Users being able to generate content and load it into game.
But there's so many directions we can go. More importantly, we do want to give ownership. We do want to give tradability. We do want people to be able to accumulate and distribute in a way that suits them, and we want to make it competitive and fun. We've always had this thought of releasing the fun token as well to make it part of this ecosystem, but super happy that we haven't, because I think we only will if we need to, or if it makes sense. We will wait for our economy to develop before we start putting a currency in it, which I think really every game should have done if they could have afforded to. Because then you've got the use case demand, you've got the demand for that kind of thing. And I think we will get to that point where we have enough different projects on enough different chains, enough different communities, and a really cool, vibrant, collectible atmosphere. Because we don't, even if it's something super rare, we like maybe the super rare things. It would be okay if they were worth silly money, but we want people to be able to create a collection here and choose a character depending on their mood, or perhaps we'll host a tournament for Tashi Protocol, and in order to play, you have to have the Tashi cart and racer, right? Like it's just a way of bringing a new element of fun and tribalism to something which is already fun and tribal.
Yeah, I like it. Well, we've got 5 minutes left, so I'm going to ask you a couple questions. But the first one is, what is something you'd like to see Web3 focusing on more? Like, you guys are coming from a gaming perspective and you're talking about fun, which I love that's like the fundamental objective of your project. But what is something that you think as a Web3 community we should be focusing on more that maybe we're not focusing enough on?
Sometimes I think we focus too much on the tech and not enough on the people. Because it's cool because there's this whole Pandora box that you open, and oftenly in our team chat, we of course we have like blue points and we just follow them and we squash them. But when you have talent and when you have technology at the same time, it's very easy to get lost because you have this whole box of tools that you can use. You're like, wow, we could go on and use magic link to XYZ, and oh my god, have you thought about HCS20? And yeah, now it's going to be recursive, and there's those inscriptions over there now, and so, but at the same time, the needs, no matter Web 2 or Web 3, Web 1, the needs do not really change. It's just painting points. They're oftenly the same, like 99% for sure, like they're the same. So in a very broad way, I would love Web3 to focus much more on communities and on the people that's crafting it rather than on the tech. But they're intertwined, so I get that. But yeah.
We have one of the things Web3's done for years is done a great job building communities. And how do you think we can improve that? Or like in what way, what does that look like to you? That improvement in community focus?
Yeah, like
relative
for sure,
to what it is now.
Yeah, for sure. Like building games around small communities is absolutely key. Like creating, again, like small pockets, small ecosystems that are all interconnected. That's where the juice is at, in my opinion. So if you have a great use case, because one of my great friends, Vicente from VCZ, is having, you should look him up. He's really cool, and he's building an amazing use case to just to build up this whole entire ecosystem around music, which is really cool. They're having concerts. It's on the Liftoff. It's token gated. It's really nice. There's insane like artists coming in. They're using tech, but at the same time, it's fun because it's music. It's something you already know. So it's small pockets, small worlds inside those communities that but it's really facilitating those technologies that we have through communities. But gaming is another great example. Again, for us, it's just it brings me closer to everyone that I'm interacting with through the game. So yeah.
I love it. Sai, what's something we should be talking about as a Web3 ecosystem space that we're not talking about?
I'd say the same thing, really. The user. Behind that, I'd say problem solving, but that's still the same thing, really. Or product market fit, but that's still the same thing. It's about creating things that people need, or things that at least people didn't know that they needed.
I think that's it's an interesting point, but that both of you are making, and we'll kind of end on this. But working with VCs, working with angel groups and stuff like that in the Sacramento, Northern California area. Oops, sorry. Kind of the key point right now is traction. That's what everybody's looking for, is traction. They want to say, before I invest in you, I want to know that you have customers who are willing to part with their money because you're giving them value. That's what I want to know. It doesn't have to be a massive audience. You don't have to have huge revenue or profit. You just have to demonstrate that you found product market fit, that there's a large enough market for us to expand into, and that those users are willing to part with their money because you've provided enough value to them. And kind of the impression I've gotten from your team, we've been talking over the last week about a number of things, both technical and community and prepping for this. But one thing that I have felt is that the most important part to you is that your users are having fun. Like, if you didn't raise funds and you guys kept doing this as a hobby in the background, that wouldn't be a bad thing, right? A lot of people are really pushing for investments and launching tokens, trying to raise money to reach some vision. But it's more important for you to build something that is fun, that users enjoy doing. And I think that's maybe that side, to your point, and even Phil, to your point, like a little bit of what we're missing right now. It's like people sell a vision right now and then build their community through funding around that vision. But how often are they actually letting the users touch the product and give feedback and experience the value as they're going through this? Like, selling a vision is one thing, but selling something you can just log in and play for 15 minutes and go, wow, that was fun. And then you walk away going I didn't have to spend anything to play that game. But it would be nice to have this one skin or this one character, right? That doesn't give you any technical advantage, but it's part of your community. And you're like, yeah, you know what? I'll buy a Peculiar Peep or a Dead Pixel or a Bored Ape car or whatever in game, right? Because that's the community I'm part of. So I could totally see that. That's it. And am I understanding that correctly? Am I representing you guys correctly in that of there's this
fundamentally, fun is a lot more scalable than scarcity by definition.
I'm going to quote that, dude. I'm going to put that. Fun is a lot more scalable than scarcity. I love it.
Scarcity can be a component, and there's nothing wrong with that. But and I think that's another thing that the space is severely lacking, is just to step away from trying to make a Web3 game, trying to make a Web3 product, and just focus on the product or the game and what makes a good product and what makes a good game. And it's not Web3 that's going to make it alone. That's for sure.
Well, on that point, I'm going to go ahead and end us right here. I thank you both for joining us on this broadcast. Again, you guys, I love what you guys are doing. It's an inspiration, the position you're taking, using the best technology to solve the problems that arise from your interactions with your community and the feedback you're getting from your players, and really focusing on like adding value. And in your case, the value is that fun component. I'm going to steal that quote for sure, that fun is way more scalable than scarcity. I love it. So with that being said, thank you so much for joining us again.
Hey, it was a pleasure. Thank you for hosting us. It was really cool.
Yeah, thanks,
Absolutely.
man.
And we'll be back again next Tuesday, noon Pacific time. And so anybody out there watching, absolutely join us. Thank you again to our guests. Thank you everybody who joined us, and we will see you soon.
Cheers, Ken. Take care.
Cheers.